All right. Well, thank you all so much for being here. Welcome back to those who've been to other workshops. Welcome to those who are new to our workshops, and welcome to our staff who are here to speak about their creative coping skills. So a couple ground rules that we always go over in the workshops. As a reminder, these workshops are different than a standard peer grief support group in that there's a little bit less dialogue amongst participants, a little more kind of takeaway oriented. That being said, we do want to hear from you. We do want you to feel comfortable asking questions. So if at any point you have questions, please, the easiest is to raise your Zoom hand if you're able to do that. But if you're not, if you raise your physical hand, hopefully one of us will see you. There won't be too much screen sharing. So in those moments, it's easier to see everybody if it's your physical hand that you're raising, or you can always just come off mute. Generally speaking, we will keep people on mute just to avoid any sort of kind of audio issues. But again, our presenters, they've built in time for questions. So please speak up with any questions or thoughts that you have. As always, just respecting everyone in the room. Everyone's coming from different places, has different grief processes, different thoughts, different ways of going about things. So if you do want to share, just make sure you come from that own person perspective. Other than that, just kind of sharing space with everyone, trying not to speak too much or speak over anyone. But again, we do want your voices to be heard. So it is safe to speak, but always just want to put that reminder out there. I think that kind of covers it in terms of ground rules. So again, today's workshop, it's creative coping. So this is going to be different. You'll hear less from Glenn and myself. We're kind of just here to facilitate things, but we have a whole bunch of people from our staff who are just wonderful, going to share their own experiences. As a reminder, SADOD is peer-based. So everyone here has themselves lost a loved one due to substance-related causes. So they're coming to this from a place of actually being bereaved, and here are some coping skills. We have a couple people who wanted to be here today that weren't able to, so they actually recorded videos of themselves speaking about their creative coping skills. So those will be kind of spread out in between the presentations. But with that being said, I'll go ahead and turn it over to our first presenter, Dawn Lipstein. So Dawn, go ahead.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you. It's good to see all of you here. When I was asked if I had any creative coping skills, I didn't think I did, but then I really gave it some thought, and stretching my comfort zone is what I call my creative coping skill. And before my son, who his name's Josh, he died by suicide in March of 2011 while serving in the Navy. And before he died, I was so uncomfortable talking in front of people, and especially to people that I didn't know. In September of that same year, I attended a suicide survivor seminar and I attended it by myself, and that in itself was stretching my comfort zone. While I was there, I introduced myself to some of the speakers. Talk about super uncomfortable. For me, that just wasn't in my wheelhouse until then. And I got to know some of the people, some of the presenters, and one of them asked me if I would be willing to share Joshua's story to the Department of Defense and Veterans Affairs Conference on suicide prevention. Well, I said yes before knowing any of the details. That wasn't stretching my comfort zone. That was just pure stupidity, because I learned afterwards that I would be talking in front of about 1,000 people, higher ups, and I'd have 10 minutes to share Joshua's story. So they were higher ups in the military, and I was just like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? So one of the things, though, that I noticed after doing this was I had completed my 10 minutes of sharing his story, and I sat up on the stage while the others were sharing their stories. There was 5 of us, and I noticed that I felt lighter. Like there was something about my grief that just felt a little different. And so I started speaking to other groups. And each time I did that, a little bit of lightness came into my grief. Um, and I had a big trigger where whenever I saw somebody in a Navy uniform, and actually in any military uniform, it made me very uncomfortable. And I thought, how can I overcome this trigger? And I decided I was just going to come and go up to somebody that I saw in uniform if I was close enough, and I'd go shake their hand and thank them for their service. So that little by little, that became easier and easier for me to do. And the trigger melted away. Josh died in Virginia Beach. And I said to myself that I would never go back there. Like I could never step foot in Virginia Beach again. And the Navy called and asked me to do a PSA and take a guess as to where they wanted me to go to do that PSA. Yeah, it was Virginia Beach. I got all nerved up the whole drive down, and I got there and I did it. And now I can go to Virginia Beach, and it's very easy for me to do. The list goes on and on. The point is, each time I put myself in a position of discomfort, I found myself healing a little bit more and more. And I became comfortable stretching my comfort zone. So now I would like to introduce my good friend, Luke.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Don. Great story. One of my part of my background is other than being a journalist and a writer of the newsletter content for SatOD, I'm also a musician, and I'm the songwriter for my band, and I also do a solo project. And almost 99.9% of the music I play are songs that I write. And this creative coping skill that that I've been able to harness songwriting for is when there's a situation that is devastating or unfortunate at the very least, where there's nothing else that can be done. The circumstances are such that they can't be changed, such as the death of a loved one. So in those instances, and they happen with all too much frequency, as we know, I usually start, I always start with just the raw feelings. I will take everything I'm feeling, and without trying to craft them into lyrics just yet, I will do what I call like psychic vomit onto the stage, or onto the page, excuse me. And just every feeling I'm having in no particular order, and just get it down. And if I, usually it's numerous pages, memories of the person who's deceased, things we did together, if I'm mad at them still, or if I whatever I'm feeling, if we had some great times together, or if we had plans that were never realized because they're gone. Put everything down in just a raw, unstructured form, and then I'll just put it down for a while, and then go back through, and piece by piece I can put them into the lyrics. And part of the process of the visceral process of writing it down onto the page, through doing that, even though it hurts, it the actual process of the pen going across the paper and the words you write down, that in itself is a coping mechanism. It helps distract you from the pain while putting it somewhere. And the actual act of writing down your feelings helps you cope, helps me cope at least. And then once I have everything condensed into, well, first of all, presented on pages, and then I can pick out certain phrases that are powerful and then structure them to work as song lyrics. The next part is the actual singing of the words about that person, even if I'm not singing them to an audience, just to myself, just me and my guitar. That is really helpful in coping with the grief. Just that exercise of singing about that person. And I know I've got a good song on my hands when when I play it for the first time, the eyeball rivers open up and I'm weeping and trying to sing at the same time, but I know I've got a good one if I can't play it the first few times without some kind of overwhelming emotional reaction. But it helps with the grief. It helps express it and it helps point it somewhere. I have a specific song I'd like to. Laura, are you going to be able to play that track for us? Okay.
Yes, are you ready?
Well, I have the lyrics first. Can we see the lyrics first?
Yep.
Okay, this one is called Thinkful Wishing. It's just a play on words, which is, a play on wishful thinking. But this was about a friend named Jonas, and Jonas went too soon. And Jonas was a good friend of ours, and particularly close to the bass player in my band. I was friends with Jonas as well. So this is written from my perspective, but also from my bass player's perspective, because when I brought it to the band, I wanted to give him a way to, because he's not a songwriter, I wanted him to be able to participate in this. And I wanted him to sing it, but he wasn't ready. So I wrote him a vocal accompaniment part. So when we get to the part where it says, "I wish you didn't have to go," not the first two times around, but in the chorus, you'll see it in the third stanza. You can hear the backing vocals of somebody singing, "Don't Go." That's the bass player having his participation so that he can express his grief along with me. So that's a little bit of glimpse into the songwriting process. This is a punk rock song, so it's fast and short, but expletive free. So that's my short treatise on the songwriting and creative coping skill that it is. And I encourage anyone and everyone to explore it, because there's no right or wrong way to do it. You just have to do it. So with no further ado, if Laura, if you want to play the track for us, that'd be great.
Okay. Is everyone hearing that? No, no one was hearing anything.
No.
Okay, one moment. What about now?
No.
Let me just try
I
one more
think I think
thing.
if you share screen and share sound, I think you'll get it.
I think we heard it twice, layered layered on top of itself, but you guys get the point. So thank you, Laura, and I will present our next staff member talking about their creative coping skills, and that is Carrie Bickford, and I believe she sent in a video. Is that correct?
Yes. Before we do that, few things. One, I just want to make a plug that Luke will be performing at our conference this year, just like he did last year. So if you liked that, which he's incredible, just another reason to come to the conference. That's October 18th through the 20th in Framingham. We'll make sure you get that information in the follow-up email. The second thing that I also wanted to just kind of pause for before Carrie's presentation is see if there were any questions for Dawn or Luke. Right. If there's no questions at the moment, then we will keep going. You can always jump in at any point. So I will share Carrie's video. I'll make the sound louder. It sounds like it wasn't too loud last time, so I apologize for that. Okay, share sound.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carrie Bickford, and welcome to this creative coping workshop. I am going to talk to you about ways that I have learned to cope with Nathan's death creatively, which I would say was the very first thing that I did. I felt like I was just overwhelmed with feelings and emotions, and it was too hard to talk to people. So I turned to writing. I wrote poetry. I wrote stories. I started working for SATOD, and I wrote in the newsletter many articles about Nathan and about, you know, the grief that goes along with substance use disorder and loss. But I also am a person who has always enjoyed photography, and I take long walks, nature walks with my dogs. And I realized that that was a way that I was beginning to cope as well. I felt like I was out in the bogs of Cape Cod with Nathan, having this very special alone time and taking in the beauty and just remembering him, bringing him along with me, and taking a lot of pictures. And it's very emotional sometimes. I'll watch a sunset and I'll have all those feelings of, you know, wishing he were here and, you know, feeling the love that I have for him and feeling the incredible hole that he's left in my life. And I try to fill it with these beautiful moments that I can, so that I can relate to his life, because he was just this beautiful person in my life. And I didn't want him to always be associated with sadness and loss and, you know, those kinds of feelings. I really wanted to bring him into my world and remember the joy of living with him, the joy of, you know, having him in our lives, and the joy of continuing to have his memory right here with me in everything that I do. So, I mean, you hear people say it, but I'm going to say it too, and that is I carry him along with me. He's in my heart at every moment. He's just right there. And, you know, recently we went on vacation and I got up at 4:30 in the morning to take a picture of the sunrise, which happened to be a spectacular sunrise in Chatham that day. And I was just so in the moment, just filled with how much beauty there is in the world. And, you know, Nathan isn't here to share that with, but there are other ways that I share things with him, and I'm sure you do this too. I'm going to share the picture with you now, but I was enjoying this moment, and I just grabbed a shell and I wrote his name in the sand and drew that heart. And now every time I look at that picture, it makes me smile. It was just a something that my soul needed to do, and a way to to remember Nathan. So that's what creative coping is. It's finding a way that you can express your feelings and remember your love, and remember that our loved ones, we never know how long they're going to be here with us, and either you or they leave at some point, and we need to figure out ways to keep them with us that bring us joy, because we certainly know there's enough sadness and sorrow and so many moments of just complete loss. I hope this helps you. If you are a subscriber to the SAT-OD newsletter Voices, I've written articles in there about Nathan and about my feelings about him and the loss our family has survived, and that might resonate with you. And many of the people that are here tonight are sharing similar ways that they cope with their grief. And I highly recommend that you find a way to remember your loved one with joy and with the great knowledge that you are never really without them. We just have to learn to love them in a whole new way. And that's what I feel like I'm doing with Nathan. So thank you so much for listening to me, and I hope somehow this helps you in your grief journey. Bye-bye.
Right. So there you heard from Carrie Bickford. Like Dawn, she's one of our peer grief support specialists. Carrie does a lot of work focused on grandparents raising grandchildren. She's based over in Cape Cod. Is that right, Glenn? Yeah, Cape Cod. Sorry, I'm not from Massachusetts, so I get a little confused with some of the areas, but she runs a support group. So everyone here, I'll just kind of add in, is very accessible. So if there's somebody that kind of shared something that resonates with you, you all have my contact information, reach out and I can connect you with anyone. So next up, I will have Jill Shanahan share her creative coping skill.
Hey, everybody. Oh, wow. I have to say, I'm feeling a little emotional right now. Just hearing everybody's ways of moving through grief. And I really appreciate being here and listening in on these other ways, because something that I have tried to hold on to in my griefy journey over here is trying things on and trying to stay with the thread if something sparks my curiosity. And I just share that because I think that might be helpful as we're talking about creative coping. Sometimes you got to try things on, sometimes they don't work, and sometimes they do. So thank you. Happy to be here. My name is Jill Shanahan. I work for the Direct Service Provider Program in SAT-OD, and I facilitate some other groups as well. Definitely a lifelong griever. I've lost many family and friends and program participants in my career. And I wanted to share a practice with you that is called a few different things. One of the main ones that you can find easily on Google is called Earth Altars or Earth Altering. And what that is a nature-based practice, a nature-based art practice that's temporary. And I have really taken this in my grief tool belt. And I'm going to show you some photos of what I'm talking about in a minute. But one of the reasons I gravitated towards this type of practice is because it's physical. You're creating a physical art piece with the natural world. So for me, also being able to connect to nature has been really supportive, being in grief. And that's for a lot of reasons. So yeah, this is a practice that I like to use the word ritual. And if people feel uncomfortable with that word, I also offer maybe like tradition, or another example is like something I do when I'm feeling a certain way. And I say that because in my grief journey, it's been really important for me to find out, like, what do I do with the big emotions, or what do I do with the anger, or what do I do with that sadness that just isn't leaving me? And this is a practice that I found helpful. So I don't know if you're sharing a screen, Laura, or if I'm sharing a screen.
I got it ready to go.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So I offer this resource over here called Morning Altars, and it's like a 7-step guide to connecting with nature and working through grief, really, because the person who created this, that I have adapted my practice from, I should say, he developed it after experiencing really deep loss and grief through a relationship that ended. And through this practice, he started going on hikes every day. And when he was in the woods, he would start clearing out a little spot, and then he would start kind of like assembling an earth altar. And the practice really does break it down in the book for you in terms of like how to collect supplies and making sure that we're honoring nature. If we are using supplies from outside, we're not going to harvest all of the mushrooms that are in one spot if you want to take your practice in that way. So I definitely suggest looking through that book or finding a copy at the library or something to kind of look through these important pieces of the practice. But I also offer it in a way of when I'm working through grief, for me, grief can feel really kind of chaotic sometimes. And what I like about this practice is that it has become a ritual, which means it's just a thing I do when I'm feeling a certain way, like I said before. And the other thing I really like that this brings is some sort of structure, some sort of a semblance, some sort of creativity too. So even if you look at these that I have up here right now, like one of them that's bigger in the middle, like that's a pretty heavy, solid structure with rocks. And this one was created when I was actually going through kind of a relationship situation that was really challenging. So it's interesting to kind of look back on the work and say, huh, that one's pretty dense and pretty heavy. This one's a little more airy. And I show these examples as ones that, I spend a lot of time on outside, but this doesn't have to be a practice that you have to go out into the woods and do this. And I say this because I think if you can do the next slide, Laura, that will illustrate it a little bit differently. This is another one that I had built on my desk at home. And I built it from a bouquet that was from an event that meant a lot to me. Actually, this might have been the grief conference last year, honestly, when I was carrying around these flowers at the staff meeting. So this was something that I offered to my mother because my mother is also going through a lot of grief with losing her mother. And I know she's not the type of person to go out into the woods and just kind of like do this. So I said, Ma, if you go to Stop and Shop, and a lot of times they have flowers that are on sale that they're going to get rid of, pick yourself up a bouquet, tend to that bouquet over the next few days. And that's actually how I did this particular one, was I just built it through the flowers and the other elements that were kind of already withering. And just left it on my desk. And I know at other offices that I've worked at before, sometimes there's like a big puzzle out there to like distract people and get your brain working in a different way. And this is actually what that has done for me, because I also facilitate a handful of support groups. And something like this on the desk is really, really helpful for me before and or after I facilitate something, or my buddy Gabe and I do a lengthy, dense training. And these are just practices that I've had to also adapt to figure out, like, how do you do this work as well? So yeah, I think I'm wondering if there's anything else particular I want to say about this. There's so much flexibility in it. You might hear one thing that I said, and I will just say, like, take that and run with it and do whatever you want with that. But for me, I also use this as an opportunity to maybe remember somebody. My friend, a good colleague, and friend Chris, his first year anniversary is coming up a month from now. And I also have another colleague and staff member that I worked with who is a year and a day apart from him. So next month we have 2 anniversaries in 1 week. And this is a practice that I might pull out when I'm feeling a certain way and I'm thinking about them. So it's connecting me to them, and similar to what Carrie was just saying in her video, connecting to them, but also connecting the beauty to it, right? Because a lot of our folks have died in these tragic ways, and often that's kind of, the weight of it. But how do we kind of reframe that for ourselves a little bit? So yeah, connecting to myself, connecting to my inner emotions about what's going on, I think is another part of this practice.
Thank you so much, Jill. Any questions for Jill?
Jill, I have a question.
Yeah.
So when you're collecting the stuff for them, do you have an idea already in your head and then you collect stuff based on the idea, or do you just collect stuff as you see it because you like it and it's beautiful and then you create something out of what you've collected?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It depends on where I am. So like with the bigger rocks one, that was actually at a beautiful gorge down the street from my house where I live. So those are the supplies that I had. But I will say also, there was a lot of different crystals and things in those photos, and that is just a whole other hobby that I have. And you don't need those elements, but those are something that I add to that. And so if we want to talk about that piece of it, there are certain stones that might have certain properties that I will create a grid from. That was my original practice. I used to call it crystal gridding, but we adapted a little bit. So yes, so it depends on the person. Like Curtis and I, whose anniversary is the 21st of next month. We share a birthday in March, which I just find so special. So I might use certain stones or certain elements that are around March or Aries or whatever I want to connect it to. So yeah, feel free to, go wild.
It's like just whatever you want.
It is. It really is. Like what is important to you? What connects you? Do shells connect you to your person? Does this particular type of flower?
I love that.
Beautiful. Any other questions? Right. So next up we have Allie. Allie is our social media and content creation manager, and this is a video, this is pre-recorded. She'll be talking about her grief journey with Kempo Karate. So if you'll give me a moment. Let's see this here. Okay. So first off, she wanted to share this picture from when she went for an exam for Bell. So this was a really big accomplishment for her. So this is Kempo Karate. And here we have her video. Try to make this as loud as possible.
Hi everybody, Allie here. Sorry that I can't be here tonight. It's actually my angel mama's birthday, so I'm probably enjoying some carrot cake in her celebration today. So Glenn and Laura, I'm sure you guys are doing a wonderful job. Excuse me. Pardon me for that. And I'm there with you guys in spirit. Anyway, so with today's theme of the workshop, Creative Coping Skills, I'm here to talk to you guys about American Kempo Karate, which, in case you haven't been able to tell, I am wearing my gi right now. So basically, I'm just gonna cut to the chase. Martial arts is always something that I wanted to do and always loved. It isn't, even though you guys have probably already heard me say 100,000 million times how my fiance is a martial artist, owns a martial arts school, he has 4 black belts, blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, I always wanted to be a martial artist and pursue one. So it just so happened that January 2nd of 2023, we opened up his very own American Kempo Karate School in his hometown, Zanesville, Ohio. And at the time I was still going back and forth between Ohio and Maryland, so I hadn't quite fully lived here yet. But early on, I knew this was something that I wanted to pursue fully to the greatest. No more a little bit here and there and dabbling in some systems like what I did when I was an actress living in LA. No more, grappling or sparring or whatever. Like, this was my time to actually pursue a sense of normalcy, which was desperately what I needed after my mother had passed away just 6 months prior in July of 2022. So not long after we opened, I found myself immersing as much as I could in American Kempo Karate. I took every class that was available, which was about 4 classes a week. I started finding a sense of community, of purpose of meeting new friends, and of course there's the pressure, but also the connection to my then boyfriend's school out in Los Angeles, where his instructors I would know them, or I'd become acquainted with them. His peers would become friends of mine. Just, you know, there's a lot of pressure being the school owner or the partner of a school owner, which I'm sure I put out myself. But obviously in martial arts, it's a lot of yelling, it's a lot of screaming and punching and all that stuff. And that was exactly what I needed after losing my mother to cancer. I could release all that in just a healthy, inspiring, powerful way. And in fact, in American Kempo Karate, so on the crest here, I will show you the crest. We have a dragon and we have a tiger. So the tiger represents the physical realm, or the student. And then the dragon represents the spiritual realm. So if you notice here, the tiger is looking up to the dragon. And it's because in American Kempo Karate, we are taught that ultimately we are aspiring to reach the spiritual realm, which, you know, you can apply that to heaven, you can apply that to the universe. And so that was really cool for me, that here I'm doing this not long after my mother's passing, and I get to be that tiger, knowing that one day I will enter that spiritual realm, or heaven, or the universe. So a lot of beautiful symbolism. So fast forward to end of December 2023. I'm in my orange belt test, which may not seem like that high ranking or that big of a deal. But compared to my yellow belt test, I mean, now is 16 new techniques that I had to learn. It was 2 different katas. It was a whole new creed. Or pledge that I had to say. It was so many different things. And well, I had a freak accident where I ended up severely injuring my knee. Still got the orange belt, but it was a very devastating injury. We went to the hospital, and that's where I got this thing, because they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me, even with x-rays. So all of January, oh, and Ian proposed to me in the interim. Was it a guilt trip that I gave him? Or just interesting time? No, I'm kidding. Apparently I butchered the other proposal attempts, so we'll just leave that, ... Anyways, so all of January I was in doctor's appointments, MRIs, everything, and eventually surgery was scheduled. I knew that there was a strong possibility I tore my ACL, but I just didn't know fully how much of a reality it was gonna be. And when I woke up from that surgery, and now this thing, which can't even fully fit the camera, this thing was halfway up my thigh and all the way down my ankle, was wrapped around me, and I couldn't even move my leg. That is a very, very scary feeling. And very quickly, very rapidly and violently. Oh, and by the way, so it turns out I had a 90% tear in my ACL in this total freak accident. So very quickly, my sense of routine, my sense of normal that I was so desperately seeking after years of just this holding my breath pattern between my years of my brother's struggles with substance use, coupled with my mother's first battle with cancer, and then ultimately his untimely death to an accident OD. And then all the other years and still living in LA and all the mayhem that ensues when you're living in LA, to then my mother being re-diagnosed with cancer when I was 27, to then eventually her death 1 month shy of me turning 30. It was a lot. So now this was my sense of, oh my gosh, I'm feeling that here's a sense of normal. I have new friends, I have new community. You know, the people at Ian school in LA, they're connected to me. One of his head instructors has become my mentor and still is. And it got all ripped away from me after my surgery. So I had to learn to just, as I say, release and let go. I had to release and breathe, and you know, I learned during my healing process with my own surgery, where I had to learn how to walk again. I'm still in physical therapy. That, you know what? It reminded me of the Orange Belt Pledge, which is, I understand that I am but a beginner in a new and fascinating art. I'm probably butchering it right now. Let me see. I understand that I am but a beginner in a new and fascinating art, which will direct me to greater obligations and responsibilities. To honor these obligations and responsibilities, I pledge myself to serve my instructor, fellow students, and fellow men. That should be right. And then, of course, here, doing with the salute. It reminded me of that during this recovery process, because I had to remind myself that this is just the beginning of my journey, and that means that a little detour had to be what I needed to have to fully release and let go, and fully stop looking back and knowing that, hey, I don't need to keep on reliving the negative memories with my mother, all the bad memories with my mother. It's what my older brother told me during my recovery process from my surgery, which is, she's still carrying along with us. And just because I have to learn how to walk again, just because I'm still in physical therapy, does not mean her existence stopped on July 24th, 2022. And that helped me so very much. So now I can be back in my pursuit of a black belt, but really it's not just a black belt anymore, which stubborn me, that's what I wanted to achieve. It's not even that, it's that higher sense of purpose. It is that spiritual realm. It is that inner dragon, while owning the tiger I am now. And just like with all of us in our grief journeys, it's not linear. Some days might hurt more than others. Some days my knee might hurt more than ever. Some days I might miss my mom and my brother more than ever. But at the same time, I know what I'm aspiring for. I know what I'm after, and that makes it all worth it.
Thanks. There you have Allie kind of giving a pretty unique example of, when you find your coping skill and the universe takes that away from you, even if temporarily, just kind of how we bounce back from that. Any reactions before we move on to the next person? All right. And next up we have Tavin.
Thanks, Laura. Hi, everyone. I'm Tavin. I'm a projects assistant for SATOD, and I've had a lot of grief in my life, with addictions and deaths and all that stuff. And I had a really close friend die of an overdose a couple weeks ago. And it was really cool because the presentation I'm going to do is about like creating stuff out of flowers and growing gardens and things like that. And it was really cool because her mom had me go with them to pick out the flowers for her casket, and also had me read a thing at her funeral about like nurturing your garden and helping it grow. And I just thought that was really cool that it was just something that was really like related really closely to me. And so it was just really nice. And I felt really, the church was completely full to the brim where people were standing up against the back walls and everything. So when I got up there to talk, I was like, oh, I can't feel my skin. And then I was like, oh, wait, this is what I do. This is flowers. We're good. And so it like got me through it. So that was really good. So yeah, if you want to pull up the email, Laura. I'm just going to go through a couple different things. So at the top, is our gnome home that we made, me and my daughter and I. We got some of those like blue, like bobo bead things that you make wet. What are they called? They're like gel things, and we used them for the river. And my daughter made these little stools and tables out of like buttons, and she made like a little hammock. I couldn't find a picture of the hammock, but she made like this little hammock. And so anyways, we had a really fun time doing gnome homes we did gnome homes for like 3 years. And by the end of it, we had like every gnome home thing you could ever imagine having. So yeah, it was a lot. But that third picture, the gnome that's holding the welcome sign, he's a gnome that's about 4 feet tall. And like right before my mom passed away, she repainted him for me. And so I have him out in my garden because he's just like so cute and earthy. So I really like him. And then the next pictures are, so these are morning glories. I don't know if morning glories are a thing on the East Coast or not, but they're actually a weed, a morning glory is. And I remember my mom told me one time, she said, baby, if you ever want something to grow really well, plant a weed. So that's what I do. And I plant them along my fence line. And when I plant them out of seeds. And so when they first are planted, they're obviously just dirt. And then they just start sprouting up little tiny things. And then the picture that's like over on the like the third, this one right here. I guess you can't see my mouse. Yeah, that one. Yeah. So that's like a close-up of kind of the final morning glory production. So it starts as nothing, and then there's so many blooms on this morning glory now that I can't, there, you can hardly even see foliage anymore. There's millions. I was telling my friend I deadhead them. Like I pick off one of my most favorite therapeutic things to do is to pick off the dead flowers. And when you pick off the dead flowers, what's really cool, if you don't know this, is it makes it grow a new flower. Every time. If you pick off the dead flower, a new flower replaces it. So the more you pick off your dead flowers, it's called deadheading. And the more you pick off your dead flowers, the more flowers you'll have. And so as you can see, I've been obsessively picking off my dead flowers on this vine. And the other day I told my mom's best friend, I swear I pick off 100 of these every day. And so the next day I decided I would start counting, and I got to 187 before I was even done. And I was like, whoa, I thought I was over exaggerating, but really it's a lot. So anyways, it's beautiful. There's like purple, white, blue, they're all different colors. So that's my morning glory. And then this is just kind of a random example of like kind of making stuff go from nothing to something. And so this was my old house. It was a really crappy house, but I did a lot of yard work there. And it started when I first moved in, it was like, it wasn't even that nice dirt. It was like leaves and rocks and garbage and junk of all sorts of things. And so I planted some grass in the yard, and then I just started getting plants, seeds, all kinds of stuff. And I ended up growing sweet potato vine there, which is the lime green looking foliage in that third picture or the fourth picture on the end. And by the time the summer ended, the sweet potato vine had completely overgrown. I mean, you can see it in that very last picture. That's all just sweet potato vine completely overgrown the whole entire front of my house and all the way out into my lawn. I couldn't control it at all. And that's not even a weed. So it just grew really well. So that's that. And then these are just a couple pictures of like my favorite flowers because I think they're kind of unique looking. And I just, this particular flower, that orange one, it does this really weird thing when it grows. Like it doesn't just grow a middle, then like grow, it doesn't go out. It goes around in a circle. So sometimes so there'll be whole hunks of petal missing, like it looks like a rabbit or something ate it, but it's just because it's not done growing yet. So it's really cool. It like grows in a circle like this. So it's just, it's a really cool flower. And then those little pink poppy ones at the end are really drought resistant. And it's like right now today, it was the coolest day we've had like all summer, and it was like 92. So it's really important to have some drought resistant stuff here in Texas. So those are just a couple random pictures of my favorite stuff. And then the next one, so this is really cool. So the first picture is actually, it's a piece of pottery that my dad's best friend, Barry, he actually made it on his pottery wheel, and he called it fire. And so it's really cool because when you look at it straight on, it doesn't even look like fire. It just looks like a brown tulip kind of. But when you look at it from above, like he made it look like fire like that. And I just thought that was just so cool. And one of the things I do is I have these like fake succulents on a stem kind of, and I add them to my flower bouquets. Like if I have a little hole somewhere, I'll just like stick one in the flower bouquet. Well, one day I was redoing flower bouquets and they were rolling all over the place and I was sick of it. So I just stuck them in the little holes of the fire. And I was like, oh, wow, look at that cute succulent bouquet I made. So now it's still a succulent bouquet sitting on my table with the fire underneath it. So that's my little succulent bouquet I accidentally made the other day. So there's that. And then the arrangements. So the arrangements started when I first moved out of my mom's house after my separation from my ex. And it started by me getting a couple of like $4 bouquets of flowers from our grocery store here. And then I realized that some of the flowers last a lot longer than other flowers. So I would like take all the dead ones out, keep the good, healthy ones, go buy one more $4 bouquet, marry it in. This went on and on and on until pretty soon I had like 5 bouquets in my house, all of, and you know, $4 a week, totally affordable. It's fine. And so I had up until like, I think right before I went out of town in June, I still had flowers that were totally perfectly healthy from my mom's celebration from when she died from like March. And so if you take care of them really good and you like keep the water fresh and you don't fill it up too much, you can keep them fresh for so long. And certain ones last a lot longer than other ones. So but you can see like in that last one on the end, that's like a succulent thing that I stuck in there. It's just fake. I just stuck it in there. So yeah, so I do a lot of like flower arrangements, and they say that if you have flower arrangements in your house, it's supposed to boost your mood. Like it actually raises the vibration in your home. So it's always a really good idea to have fresh flowers. Sometimes I don't know if I believe it because I have a lot of fresh flowers and ooh, sometimes it is not that cute here. But nonetheless, I'm sure that it does help. I mean, it does make me feel happy a lot of the time. So, and plus they smell good a lot of the time too. So that's cool. Yeah, so I love to like watch things grow, and I've always really loved to be in nature. Like even before I started actually like gardening and planting and creating my own stuff, I just loved just like being out in nature. And I found out that like if you're an empath, it's actually you actually need to be grounded to the earth. And if you're not, you feel really out of whack. So it makes a lot of sense to me now that I know that, because that's how it is for me. If I gotta like just go get my hands in the dirt. Sometimes when I'm really upset, I just go and like stick my hands in the dirt and start digging. And then I'm like, okay, we're good. And just makes me feel really connected. And I feel like, you know, I feel like my mom definitely became one with nature for sure. She was definitely a tree hugging hippie, no doubt. And so definitely, she's a butterfly flying around for sure. And so it makes me feel really connected to the people that I've lost when I get into the earth, because I just feel like they're all kind of there with me. So yeah, so that's what I do to cope.
Thank you so much, Tavin. Those are beautiful.
Thank you.
Any questions for Tavin? All right, so next up we have Melissa, who's one of our peer grief support specialists. She couldn't make it today. She's at an IOED International Overdose Awareness Day event. So we have a video. This is a conversation between me and her where she's kind of sharing her beadwork that she does. So just one moment here. Hi, Melissa. Can you tell us a little bit about your story?
Sure. My name's Melissa, and I work for SAT-OD as a peer grief support specialist. And my job basically is to listen to grieving people at their darkest times. I love what I do. People ask me if it's heavy, and it is, but at the same time, it's not my personal grief. So it's a lot different to listen to somebody else's. And as a griever myself, I know that that is what's completely necessary to help us in that grieving process. I lost my son in August of last year to an overdose, and honestly, like this has been one of the most healing things I have done for myself, was make the switch to the grieving world, where everybody's grieving and it's okay, and nobody panics when I'm sad or upset, and it's just super healing, and that's one of the things that I've done. But then there are others.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And it's only been a year, yet in that year, you've tried so many different ways to cope with this unimaginable pain and loss. Can you tell us a little bit about one or some of your creative coping strategies that have, helped you in this journey?
Sure. I mean, writing is what I would normally use, but for some reason, when Sean passed, I could not write. But I do this beadwork. I make these. I'm going to show you the little board of crystals here. I love stones and crystals and things of that nature.
Gorgeous.
So I make a lot of these. Plus, they're sentimental in a way. I'm going to show you one in particular. My grandmother passed years and years ago, and I don't know. I think maybe 10 years after she passed, I got some of her old costume jewelry, which at the time I think I was in my 20s. I was never going to wear, but it was beautiful. And one of the things she had was this pendant, and it went with these clip-on earrings that were these little stones here. But I wanted to save them forever. So I guess that's how I got into it. And someone said, "Oh, there's wire you can buy," and I went and got some nylon coated wire. I mean, I think I've done this one in a million different things. In the beginning, I used fishing line. It's really strong, but it's not so easy to crimp. So I got the beads together. I found other beads that I thought went with it well, and I beaded it. It's pretty simple actually. As long as you have the tools you need, like you can make it out of anything. I mean, things that you find all over the house, beads, buttons, it doesn't even matter. I've used copper, anything you find, like belt buckles. I mean, I've made them out of everything. And so it's pretty simple. You need crimp beads, which are teeny tiny, so they're really hard to see, but pretty easy to work with. And a pair of needle nose pliers and a pair of cutters to cut the wire. I use a lot of fishing stuff because it's so strong and it lasts forever. These are like, this one's not on a spinner. Most of them, all of the rest are, but because this is so old, I was new at it. And I used just these little hooks that you use for fishing line. And the other ones are the newer ones. They're spinners, so it spins in the light and catches all the rainbows, which is beautiful. And yeah, you just thread it through what you want to use, crimp it, put your beads on it, put this hook on the end and crimp it. It's so simple. People are like, "Oh, how do you do that?" It is very easy, and it's relaxing. And the whole time you're thinking, but you're using one side of your brain to kind of follow a pattern and to think about this while processing, your hurt, your grief, your anger, whatever it is. When Sean passed, I spent 3 days, and I must have made 100 of these. But if I didn't, I don't know how else I would have got through those 3 days. I just sat in my room and all I did was this. And then I had 100 of them sitting around my house. So I give them away usually. People are always asking me, "Oh, you need to sell them. You need to put them on Etsy, do this, do that." It's not what I do it for. I do it because I love to do it. And over the years, I've done it for different reasons, different types of things I was going through. And I don't always, I might not pick this up for 3 months, 6 months. But when something's wrong, this is my go-to. And I start beating and working through it, especially if I can't write. And one of the great things about this too is they make beautiful gifts. People love them and they're like, "Oh my God, I love this one so much." I'm like, "Take it, just take it." It can get expensive, especially if you're not working through your trauma and your grief with a lot of other things like therapy and peer support, exercise, food, whatever. If you're not using a lot of other things too, it can get expensive and obsessive. But I love it. I make them for people when they get a new car. I make small ones to hang in the car. I'll make like little ones like this. Let's see if you can see this at all. It's hard to see.
Beautiful.
And especially color schemes. People love color schemes that match their car. I make them with different types of this one. Let's see. Oh, this one is turtles. This one has a bunch of turtles on it
Yeah,
because
look
they're so
those.
cute. Why I didn't make it green, I don't know. Again, there's not a lot of thought that goes into this. There's a lot of feeling and emotion that goes into it, but not a lot of thought. And somebody always is called to a certain one. Always. So I let them have it. Take it. Have at it.
The first one that you showed us, you said you made it in honor of your grandma. And so
Yeah.
every time you see it, if you kind of walk around the house and you kind of catch it wherever it is, does it make you think of her?
I won't always think of her, but it always feels familiar to me. It like I'm home, like it's part of my home. It's part of me. I make different ones for different things, like I said, and like this one, I made when Sean passed. I made a lot of them in dragonflies and angel wings, and this one happened to come out looking like an angel.
Yeah.
And of course, the circle just represents the circle of life.
You said
Yeah.
something that I think is really important. You said it makes you feel at home. It makes you feel comfortable, which is so important when we're grieving, because kind of one of those hallmarks of grief experience is feeling lost, feeling like you're not at home, even if you're physically at home, but just feeling like something's missing. So the fact that, you create these with so much heart and passion, and it sounds like the act of creating it is really therapeutic, kind of getting our hands to work. But also once it's a finished product, whether it makes you think of the person or not in that moment, it sounds like internally in your body that's happening, and it's giving you that comforting feeling.
Yeah, and it's a great exchange of energy. Like you're putting your energy and your everything into this one particular thing, and it's sort of when people take it, like I just recently made one for my daughter's friend, best friend. She got a new car and she loves it a lot. And she wanted one specially for that, and I made it for her, gave it to her, and the excitement she had, like there was something somebody made just for her, nobody else in the whole world has it, and she's super excited about it. So it carries on too. It's not just in the moment. In the moment, it helps so much for so many reasons, all the ones you named and then some, but it also lives on afterwards. They're not all for me. They're meant to be shared with other people. There's, of course, I'll never get rid of the one I made for my Nana 2030. Oh my gosh, we'll say about 30 years ago. Um, but yeah, I had a friend pass away of overdose last year, and she had given me this pin. She wanted me to make a necklace out of it. And I couldn't. I could not make it work because she didn't I just couldn't make it work. It's not my thing. So instead I made this. So when I do see it, I think of Tanea always. And kind of reminds me of her. Just this big bright light of energy and the starburst. She was quite something. So I also, it just helps. I don't know how, I don't know why, but it does. And these beads came from a stretchy little bracelet she had that she would wear when she would go out dancing or whatever. So
Yeah.
yeah, I just enjoy it.
Well, this is incredible. And it sounds like it's really easy to get started. You mentioned a couple
Yes.
different tools that people would need, but it really seems like just the creative possibilities are endless, whether somebody wants to make them really formal or kind of just whatever scraps they find around the house.
Yep, but they are. And really all you need is the crimp beads are a must. Of course, the wire is a must. There's a nylon coated wire that's very easy to use and it's inexpensive. You can get, I think it's 15 feet of it in a roll for, I think, $6, maybe 8 now, with inflation being what it is. And the crimp beads, they come so many in a package. And those two tools, most people have needle nose pliers or little clip and pliers at the house. Most people have them laying around somewhere. And yeah, those are the only things you really need. And like I said, buttons, pins, so many different things that people have. I've taken pieces of crystal, slabs of rocks that people have given me that they like, and wrapped wire around them and strung them up. I mean, anything. I use the copper wire, and I mean that you need like the cutter for, but it's, again, that's a few dollars just to do that. It's simple, it's easy. I
Yeah.
have a Dremel and I use that to drill holes. It's so fun. It can get really intricate, but it can also stay very simple, basic, and beautiful.
Well, thank you so much. This is wonderful. Hopefully somebody will pick up something that will be helpful to them, but really appreciate you sharing those with us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. So there you have Melissa. Any reactions?
I'll say something
Mhm.
in case Melissa's watching. I just think that that's a really creative way to do it because you can incorporate specific beads based on what your memories are of that person. So it's more like specific to that. So I really like that. Like a piece of jewelry they used to wear or something like that. I think that's really great.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, so next up we have Franklin, who's also our final presenter. So Franklin, go ahead.
Were you going to display the
You ready?
Yeah.
All right.
So I decided to write something and read it because what I'm going to talk about it's not that it's totally abstract or anything, but it's something that some people are unfamiliar with, and I wanted to write something that I could also send to you. So I'm just going to read what my description of Vipassana meditation is. So a lot of people know a lot about meditation and different kinds, and this is a very specific kind. And I try in here to give you complete instruction on what it is, and also to say what I think is helpful about it in my grief. So I decided to share basic information with you about a specific kind of meditation called Vipassana. Vipassana is a Sanskrit word that means insight meditation. I've been practicing it for 20 years, and it has helped me a great deal on my grief journey. Here's the Buddha's instruction from 2,500 years ago for this kind of meditation. Go into the forest, and at the foot of a tree, sit upright, still, and quiet. When you breathe in a long breath, notice that you're breathing in a long breath. When you breathe out a long breath, notice that you're breathing out a long breath. When you're breathing in a short breath, notice that you're breathing in a short breath. And when you breathe out a short breath, notice that you're breathing out a short breath. And that amazingly, I don't know about amazingly, but that starkly simple instruction is the foundation for Vipassana. It's the essence of the practice right there in just 100 words or so. I'm going to give you a more detailed description of how it works and what happens, if you will. So the first instruction is find your seat or take your seat, which simply means what the Buddha just said: sit erect, still, and quiet. The second instruction is follow your breath or focus on your breath, which means to concentrate all of your attention on the motion and rhythm of your breathing. The third instruction is notice when you are thinking, or notice a thought when it arises. So to kind of put those together and say what happens if a person concentrates all of their attention on their breathing, the experience of thinking is set aside or silenced, or at least quieted. Invariably, when a person does this, all of a sudden they find themselves thinking about something. A thought interrupts them from concentrating on their breath. The instruction is, instead of letting the thinking unfold, instead of following the thinking where it leads you, notice that you are thinking. Simply notice that you are thinking. The fourth and final instruction is return to the breath, which means to go back to following your breath. If a person does this, the thought that interrupted them will be set aside or silenced. You do this over and over again. And if you're a long-time practitioner, you do it thousands or tens of thousands of times, I suppose. This is the practice of Vipassana meditation. You sit still, you pay close attention to your breath, notice when a thought becomes present and interrupts you from focusing on your breath. Then instead of following where the thought is leading you, return to completely concentrating on your breath. And that is really a crisp and complete description of what the practice is. So I'm just going to say, what I think about it or what my experience of it has been. I would say that this simple activity is a powerful practice and very difficult, as a matter of fact. If you practice this for a sustained amount of time every day, it changes your relationship to your mind, or more accurately, it changes your relationship to your thinking. You see the nature of your thoughts, where they come from, how they operate, what your true relationship to them is. If you can learn to interact with your thoughts this way, you can see and experience what is actually happening in real time more clearly. I'll repeat that because this really is the purpose of Vipassana meditation. It enables you to see and experience what is actually happening in real time more clearly. This is what mindfulness is. This is what it means to be fully present It means to be entirely where you are as each moment unfolds, not somewhere else, not thinking about what is happening or interpreting or resolving the real-time experience. It enables you to more fully and accurately feel your feelings. In grief, this is extremely valuable. When I have distressful feelings or I experience the pain of grief, instead of allowing my thoughts to respond to my feelings or my pain by explaining them to myself or criticizing them or escaping from them, I feel my feelings and experience my pain as they are in real time. Mindfulness, which is strengthened and made more effective by meditation, allows me to feel what I am actually feeling, including the pain of grief, and to let it be what it is. I do not wish it was different or try to change it. I just feel it for what it is. Doing this has persuaded me that my feelings and my pain are natural reactions to the death of someone I love. So I hope, there's a lot in that, and, make sure when we send out the video, that I'll put I've typed this into journal, so it's on my journal grid, but we'll put it on something, and also I'll add a link to it about Vipassana, meditation, as well. And I'm glad to answer any questions about it in the meantime.
Questions for Franklin?
I'm sorry, I always have a
Thanks, you guys.
Sorry, I just have a question. How long did it take you how long do you do it for? Like, how long do you, in one sitting session, how long do you do that? Because that seems like maybe do it for 2 minutes.
At this stage of my practice, I sit for about 30 minutes a day.
Wow.
30 minutes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And they say that you can get benefit from it from sitting for 5 minutes a day or 10 minutes a day. The daily practice, is what matters. I would just also say that I do it in the context of a lifestyle that comes from the Buddha's teachings, and so you can divorce this from those teachings, but that I do it in that context, and that makes it a much more rich experience as well. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
Nick?
Thank you. Franklin, yeah, that was amazing. I hope that you lead one of these meditations one day for all of us. But my question is, how do you find the difference between the, I'm going to mispronounce,
Vipassana.
Vipassana versus the buzzing bee breath? What like are they how are they similar and how are they different?
Yeah, I really couldn't address, how Vipassana is similar or different from any particular kind of meditation, of which there are many kinds, including guided meditations, where somebody talks to you while you're meditating. Those are very different. But Vipassana is unique in that this is the whole thing right here. This is the whole thing. To be able to see what your mind is doing, to see it clearly, and to separate what your mind is doing from what is actually happening or how you're actually feeling or what you're actually experiencing. So the thing that distinguishes Vipassana, insight meditation, is it's very narrow and it's very clear what you're trying to accomplish, so which doesn't make it any easier to do. It's a hard practice to use, but it does accomplish what I described to you. For me, it has accomplished the ability to feel what I feel, and including if I feel emotional pain, and that's of great value, in grief. That's an opinion, I suppose. People might not agree with that, but for me, it has had tremendous value. So thank you for the question.
Any general questions or reactions?
I would just like to thank everybody for sharing all these different ways of that they've found for processing and working through their grief, and it's very helpful.
Thanks, Kathleen.
I would echo what Kathleen said, and thank you, everyone. This was a wonderful presentation and a lot of wonderful strategies were shared. So I'm grateful for each one of you.
Gary. So just a couple of announcements. I'll just put some slides up really quickly. As most of you know, we do these workshops on the 4th Tuesday of every month from 6:30 to 8 o'clock Eastern. So coming up in September, we have a workshop on meaning making in grief. That is a grief theory. And then on October 22nd, that's right after our grief conference, we have one on preparing for the holidays while grieving, because we know that kind of that period after October starts Thanksgiving and then the December religious holidays and New Year's, and it can be a really difficult time for grievers. So we'll have a workshop specifically focused on that. As always, we have our request help form where you can submit a form to be contacted by one of our peer grief support specialists, many of whom you heard from today. So please do reach out if there's any additional support that we can give you. Everyone that you heard from today is just part of our amazing community at SATOD. So please do reach out. And then of course, we have my contact information, Glenn's contact information. It would be too much to list everyone's contact information. But like I said in the beginning, if you heard from somebody that you want to connect with, just reach out to me and I can get you connected with that person. But with that being said, a huge thank you to our presenters, both live and virtually. It takes a lot of vulnerability to kind of share what people are doing with their grief journey. So just really appreciate them sharing that with all of us. There's so much to learn. And I hope that the big takeaway is that there's endless ways to cope. And it's just a matter of finding what works for you. And sometimes that means trying out lots of things. And then of course, to everyone who's here as a participant, thank you so much for showing up, for making this
thank you
space
very
for
much.
yourself and for sharing space with us. I'll stay on for a few minutes if anyone has any questions or any final thoughts. But otherwise, everyone has a great night and a great Labor Day weekend coming up.
Good night.